Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty fascinating. I think
Yeah.
the Japanese concept of kanjo,
Mm-hmm.
which is often translated as grit. But
Right.
we're going to get into like all the nuances and everything of that, and we're going to be exploring how it connects to the idea of self-affirmation using insights from the work of Teru Nakashima, who is a Japanese self-affirmation expert.
Yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
fascinating intersection of
Yeah.
of those two ideas,
Yeah.
and I think there are a lot of cool takeaways here that we can get to.
Yeah.
We're going to uncover how self-affirmation can actually boost your kanjo,
Yeah.
which is really cool, and
That's awesome.
tie it all back to some traditional Japanese values as well.
Okay, so first things first, what exactly is kanjo? Because I feel like the simple translation of grit
Right.
doesn't quite capture it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so much more multifaceted than just grit. Kanjo encompasses, perseverance, willpower, that drive to push through challenges. And ultimately, it's about achieving your goals.
Yeah.
And, it's deeply ingrained in Japanese culture and, historically linked to resilience and strength.
I can already see how that could be like both a powerful trait
Right.
and also potentially a problematic trait.
Yes.
Like if you're constantly pushing yourself to the limit, that could lead to burnout, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point.
Right.
Taken to an extreme, Kanjo can create this immense pressure.
Yeah.
Almost like you're expected to sacrifice everything for the sake of achievement.
Right.
And it can set unrealistic expectations and, as you said, ultimately lead to burnout. And that's where self-affirmation kind of comes in.
Yeah. So where does Teru Nakashima, our self-affirmation guru,
Yes.
fit into all of this? Does he even use the term kanjo in his work?
So while he doesn't use the word kanjo directly, specifically,
Okay.
his ideas about self-affirmation really resonate with the core principles of kanjo.
Yeah.
It's like he's giving us this modern framework for understanding and cultivating that inner strength without
Right.
falling into the potential downsides of pushing too hard.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does Nakashima's view of self-affirmation differ from, say, like the typical self-help advice of just telling yourself, I can do it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Nakashima uses this analogy of climbing a mountain.
Okay.
Self-efficacy is believing you can climb the mountain.
Uh-huh.
Self-affirmation is about figuring out how to climb the mountain,
Oh.
even when you can't see the path or it seems impossible.
See?
It's not just about confidence. It's
Yeah.
about adaptability, resourcefulness, and developing that resilience to keep going no matter what.
So while self-efficacy is about believing in your ability,
Yes.
self-affirmation is about understanding your approach
Exactly.
and adapting it to overcome any obstacle.
Exactly.
That's really powerful, and it sounds like this is more than just like a feel-good technique. It's really about equipping yourself with the tools to face challenges head-on.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nakashima calls it the power to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding happiness and fulfillment even in the midst of life's inevitable challenges, which aligns beautifully with the spirit of Kanjo.
Yeah.
Because when we tap into that power to live,
Yeah.
we're also tapping into that ability to persevere, to stay positive and keep striving even when things get tough.
I'm starting to get a sense of how these ideas are
Right.
interwoven. I read that Nakashima uses this interesting analogy of a baby learning to walk
Yes.
to illustrate his point. What's that all about?
He's making a point about persistence and learning from failures,
Mm-hmm.
both of which are essential elements of Kanjo.
Yeah.
A baby doesn't just give up after stumbling once, right? They
Yeah.
keep trying, they adapt, and eventually they walk. It's that unwavering spirit to keep learning and growing from each experience.
This is resonating with me on a personal level because I definitely have a tendency to give up too easily.
Mm-hmm.
When things get hard, I want to hear more about how to overcome that.
Yes.
One thing that really stood out to me in Nakashima's work is his idea of comparing ourselves not to others,
Right.
but to our past and ideal selves.
Yes.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, it's a really insightful way to fuel both growth and that Kanjo spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's about acknowledging your own progress while still striving to be better to reach your full potential.
Right.
It's less about competition and more about self-improvement.
And that ties in so perfectly with Kanjo, right? That
Yeah.
drive to constantly push for growth and betterment. It's
Yeah.
like the internal drive to be the best you that you can be.
Right.
Before we jump into how Nakashima helps us tap into all of this,
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about him?
Sure.
His background, his expertise, what makes him so qualified to speak on these topics?
Yeah, he's got some serious credentials. He's a psychologist and author.
Oh.
and has worked with over 15,000 clients.
Wow.
But what I find truly compelling is that he draws from his own life challenges.
Oh, wow.
Childhood trauma, struggles with mental health.
Yeah.
To inform his work.
I see.
It gives his teachings this powerful layer of authenticity and lived experience.
Right.
It's not just theory, it's rooted in real-life struggles and triumphs.
That's so important. Okay, so I know that Nakashima has this framework of 6 senses
Yes.
that are like the building blocks of self-affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a brief rundown of those before we head into part 2?
Of course. Yeah. The 6 senses are self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-efficacy, self-trust, self-determination, and a sense of usefulness.
Okay.
And it's crucial to remember that it's not about achieving some kind of perfect score in all 6.
Right.
We're not aiming for perfection here.
Yeah.
It's about finding a balance that works for you.
Right.
And understanding which senses need a little more nurturing in your own life.
That's such a relief to hear because sometimes these frameworks can feel overwhelming.
Right.
It's great to hear it's not an all or nothing thing and that it's about figuring out what works best for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to self-affirmation.
This has already been so insightful, and I can't wait to dive deeper into the practical side of all of this in part 2.
Me too.
We'll be back after a short break to explore how to put these concepts into action. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm excited to get into the practical side of things.
Yeah.
How we can actually incorporate these powerful concepts of Kanjo and self-affirmation into our everyday lives.
I'm all about putting these ideas into action. Where do we start? How can we actually cultivate Kanjo in a way that feels authentic and sustainable for us modern folks, dealing with all the stress and pressure of modern life?
Right. It's a great question. And, we have to remember that Kanjo isn't about forcing ourselves to our breaking point or constantly pushing ourselves to the limit.
Right.
That's a recipe for disaster in our already overwhelming world.
Yeah.
It's about harnessing that inner strength wisely and with compassion for ourselves. And that's where Nakashima's self-affirmation techniques come in. They're like tools to help us build that strong, resilient foundation.
I love that analogy, tools for building resilience. So practical.
Yeah.
So let's say someone is feeling stuck, like they've hit a wall in their career or are struggling with a personal goal.
Mm-hmm.
What's a practical first step they can take using these tools?
One of Nakashima's core teachings is about the power of perspective.
Okay.
Remember the reframing technique we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Instead of dwelling on the negative like, I'm a failure, I'll never achieve this, we can reframe those thoughts to focus on the opportunity for growth.
That's actually a real game changer. I've always struggled with negative self-talk.
Right.
But thinking of it as reframing makes it feel a lot more empowering. Like I have more control over my thoughts.
Can you give an example of how this might work in real life?
Absolutely. Imagine you're an artist working on a painting for weeks.
But it's just not coming together the way you envisioned. Instead of getting caught in that self-criticism,
Yeah.
you can reframe that and say, okay, this approach isn't working,
Yeah.
but what can I learn from it?
Right.
What new techniques can I try? That's Kanjo, meeting self-affirmation, embracing the challenge as an opportunity to refine your skills.
Turning a setback into a stepping stone.
Exactly.
I love that another incredibly helpful tool is the 4 good things exercise.
Yes.
At the end of each day, jot down 4 good things that happened, no matter how small they seem.
Exactly.
It could be a delicious meal, a conversation with a friend, a beautiful sunset, anything that sparked joy or gratitude.
Yes.
That sounds lovely, but I have to admit, I'm a little lost on how this connects to Kanjo. It seems a bit, fluffy.
Yeah, it's all about training our minds to focus on the positive. That simple act helps us build resilience and cultivate a sense of hope.
Okay.
When we're feeling overwhelmed, remembering those good things can help us stay motivated to keep that Kanjo spirit alive.
No. Oh, I see. It's like reminding ourselves that even amid challenges, there's always good to be found. I like that a lot more.
Exactly. And remember, Kanjo can sometimes lead to us pushing ourselves too hard.
Right.
That's where self-care and recognizing those good things becomes even more important.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about if-then planning. It's a really practical way to build the positive habits that support those big goals.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this if-then planning.
It's about thinking ahead, anticipating obstacles, and having a predetermined plan of action. Let's say your goal is to write a novel.
Okay.
But you're prone to procrastination.
Yeah.
You might make an if-then plan like this. If I feel the urge to scroll social media instead of writing, then I will set a timer for 25 minutes and focus solely on writing.
So it's about outsmarting that resistance and setting ourselves up for success.
Exactly. Having a predetermined plan makes us less likely to give in to temptation and derail our progress.
Yeah.
And the more we follow through on these positive actions, the stronger our self-discipline and Kanjo become.
It's like we're building up those Kanjo muscles rep by rep.
Yes.
But what about when those inevitable setbacks hit? I'm thinking about the times when that self-doubt creeps in and threatens to sabotage all our hard work.
Right?
How can we stay resilient in those moments?
This is when having a toolkit of coping strategies becomes essential.
Okay.
These are the things we do to manage stress, regulate our emotions, and maintain a sense of peace, even when things feel chaotic.
A toolkit of coping strategies. That's a great way to put it. What are some examples that our listeners might find useful?
There are so many options, and it's about finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as taking deep breaths when you feel overwhelmed,
Uh-huh.
going for a walk in nature, listening to uplifting music, or connecting with a supportive friend.
It's important to remember that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential, especially when we're trying to cultivate Kanjo.
Right.
It's not about pushing ourselves to the breaking point. It's about caring for our well-being so we can show up as our strongest selves.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Self-care and Kanjo go hand in hand.
I love that.
Now let's touch upon the final technique, small timeline visualization.
Okay.
This one's all about setting ourselves up for success by breaking down big, daunting goals
Great.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
I think this is so important because that fear of failure can be paralyzing.
Yes.
We get overwhelmed by the enormity of the goal and never even start.
Right.
So how can we use the small timeline visualization to help us overcome that?
Let's say your dream is to run a marathon.
Okay.
Using this technique, you wouldn't start by trying to run 26 miles on day one.
No.
You'd set realistic, smaller goals. Maybe start by running 1 mile without stopping, and then slowly increase the distance over time.
It's like that Kanjo spirit of perseverance, but in a way that feels sustainable and empowering.
Exactly. And by celebrating those small wins along the way,
Yeah.
we build momentum and confidence, which fuels our motivation to keep going.
I'm noticing how Kanjo and self-affirmation are working together to create this incredible synergy
Yes.
of inner strength and resilience.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about gritting our teeth and pushing through.
Right.
We're talking about building a solid foundation of self-belief and well-being.
Absolutely. And that's such a powerful combination.
Yeah.
It's about embracing both the unwavering determination of Kanjo
Right.
and the supportive, nurturing energy of self-affirmation.
Yeah.
Together, they create a powerful foundation for achieving our goals and living a truly fulfilling life.
This has been an incredible exploration so far, and we've covered a lot of ground.
Yes.
From the essence of Kanjo to practical techniques, I'm really starting to see how these seemingly different ideas, Kanjo and self-affirmation, are actually so interconnected.
Me too. And we're not done yet.
Oh.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll zoom out to look at how these concepts can help us navigate the complexities of modern life.
Okay.
We'll explore how to use these tools not only to achieve our goals, but also to live with greater resilience and purpose.
Stay tuned, listeners, as we wrap up this fascinating discussion in part 3. Welcome back, everyone, for this final part of our Kanjo deep dive. We're going to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
How can these concepts, this blend of traditional grit and modern self-affirmation, actually help us navigate the messiness of modern life? Because let's face it, things can feel pretty overwhelming out there.
It's true. The world throws a lot at us.
Yeah.
Information overload, pressure to succeed, constant change.
Right.
It's easy to feel lost, burned out, or like
Yeah.
we're just not measuring up.
Yeah.
And in that kind of environment, clinging to Kanjo, that drive to just push through could backfire if we're not careful.
Right. Like we talked about earlier, too much emphasis on Kanjo without that self-affirmation piece could lead to burnout.
Right.
So how does self-affirmation act as a sort of counterbalance to those modern pressures?
I think it all comes back to remembering your inherent worth and value.
Okay.
No matter what's going on externally.
Yeah.
Self-affirmation helps us cultivate a sense of inner peace and self-acceptance. And that allows us to weather those storms.
Right.
Without losing ourselves in the process.
So it's like having that Kanjo spirit of pushing through challenges, but with this foundation of self-love and compassion to keep us grounded.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between striving for our goals and honoring our own needs and limits.
Right.
Remember those 6 senses of self-affirmation that Nakashima talks about?
Yeah.
Nurturing those senses helps us create that inner stability even amidst the chaos of modern life.
Can we break down the six senses a bit more and see how they play out in a practical way?
Absolutely.
Because I think for a lot of listeners, the challenge is connecting those concepts to real life situations.
Right. So let's start with self-esteem.
Okay.
In a world obsessed with like external markers of success,
Mm-hmm.
money status, you name it, self-esteem reminds us that our value comes from within. It's about recognizing our strengths, our talents, what we uniquely bring to the table.
So it's like an internal source of validation.
Yes.
That's not dependent on external approval.
Yeah.
I can already see how that would be a powerful antidote to those feelings of not being enough
Exactly.
that are so prevalent these days.
Yeah. And then we have self-acceptance,
Mm.
which is a huge one, especially in the age of social media and curated perfection.
Right.
Self-acceptance is about embracing all parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
even the messy bits.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of perfectionism and recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Isn't there a danger, though, in becoming too self-accepting?
That's a good question.
Like, how do we balance that with the need to grow, to keep striving for self-improvement, which is so central to the idea of Kanjo?
Right. It's not about becoming complacent or settling for mediocrity.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that growth and self-improvement come from a place of self-love and acceptance,
Yeah.
not from a place of self-criticism or shame. When we accept ourselves as we are, we're more likely to approach challenges with a positive attitude and a willingness to learn.
That makes so much sense. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of love and acceptance, even as we're striving to become better versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties in beautifully with the concept of Kanjo.
Exactly. Now let's touch on self-efficacy, which we discussed earlier, that belief in our ability to achieve our goals.
Uh-huh.
It's a crucial sense for navigating challenges and bouncing back from setbacks.
Right.
It's what keeps us going even when the going gets tough.
And I imagine self-trust goes hand in hand with that, right?
Absolutely.
Like being able to trust your gut, your instincts, even when you're facing uncertainty.
Yes, self-trust is about believing in your judgment, your intuition, your inner compass.
Yeah.
It's what allows you to make decisions that align with your values, even when you're facing external pressures or doubts.
It's like trusting your own inner Kanjo, that
Yes.
deep down feeling that tells you what's right for you.
Perfectly said. Then we have self-determination, which is all about agency and autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
It's recognizing that you have the power to shape your life, make choices, and own your actions.
I think that's such a powerful concept to embrace, especially in a world where it can feel like we're constantly being bombarded with messages and expectations.
Right.
From external sources, it's about reclaiming your power.
Exactly. And finally, there's a sense of usefulness,
Okay.
that feeling of purpose and contribution.
Yeah.
It's recognizing how we each make a difference in the world,
Right.
whether through our work, our relationships, or simply being kind and compassionate human beings.
I love that it's like Kanjo with a heart.
Yes, it's recognizing that our lives have meaning and that we each have something valuable to offer the world.
Yeah.
And that sense of purpose fuels our Kanjo, giving us the motivation to keep going even when things are tough.
So we have these six senses as a foundation,
Yes.
these tools for building resilience.
Hmm.
But how do we actually put them into practice? How do we nurture these aspects of ourselves in a tangible way?
That's where those practical techniques we discussed earlier come in.
Right.
The reframing the four good things, exercise, the if-then planning, developing coping strategies, the small timeline visualization.
Yeah.
These are all tools we can use to strengthen those six senses and build a solid foundation of self-affirmation.
It's like we're creating this beautiful feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
The more we practice self-affirmation, the stronger our Kanjo becomes, the more resilient we are in the face of challenges, and so on.
And the more resilient we are, the more likely we are to pursue our goals, make a positive impact, and live a life that feels truly fulfilling.
This whole conversation has been so enlightening. What resonates most with me is the idea that it's not about becoming some kind of superhuman
Right.
who never experiences doubt or fear.
Hmm.
It's about learning to navigate those inevitable ups and downs with more grace, strength, and compassion for ourselves.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all perfectly imperfect human beings.
Right.
And that's okay, embracing our humanity while still striving to be the best versions of ourselves.
It's like that beautiful Japanese concept of wabi-sabi,
Yes.
finding beauty in imperfection.
Embracing that wabi-sabi spirit frees us from the pressure to be perfect and opens us to the beauty of growth, learning, and becoming.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've gone from unpacking this ancient concept of Kanjo to exploring these really practical modern tools
Right.
for cultivating resilience and purpose in a world that can feel very demanding.
Absolutely.
And for all of you listening, I want to leave you with this final question to ponder. What does Kanjo mean to you?
Hmm.
And how can self-affirmation empower you to embrace that spirit in a way that feels authentic, balanced, and fulfilling? Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep until next time.